I have a couple of jobs that I do alongside one another. So one is working as an architect. So this is a job designing buildings and exhibitions and interior design. So the work here is mainly working at my computer, preparing drawings for concept design, to get planning approval and preparing the detailed construction drawings for being built on site. And then I also have to visit building sites to take measurements, to do the drawings and to check on the construction work. And then alongside architecture, I work on making video games. So I run a small two-person studio called Small Island Games, and I work as an illustrator and art director on video game projects. I think there's similarity and crossover in all different types of design disciplines. So for me, architecture and video game are the main things I work in, and I found loads of skills that I learned while studying architecture that are directly applicable to video game design. So illustration is probably the biggest one. I spent a lot of time drawing by hand or on the computer while I was doing architecture, and that's something which has led directly into being able to produce the artwork for video games. But then also there's the experiential side of things. So in architecture, you're always thinking about how people will feel in a space and how they'll move from one space to the next, and the kind of sort of emotions that people feel and the experience that they have. And I think that's exactly the same in video games. You have to think about the sequence of spaces or the sequence of images which people are going to experience as they move through things. I was always a really meticulous drawer, so I did used to spend time filling up sketchbooks and doing really detailed drawings with fine liners. So I think that that was definitely a sign that some kind of quite detailed illustration or drawing career would be something that I probably should do. I think I was 15 or 16 and doing my GCSEs when I filled out one of those career surveys in school, and I never even considered architecture. I didn't even know what an architect was at that point. But after putting in the things I was interested in and the subjects I was doing, it was one of the suggestions that came up, and I really just took it from there. When I first learnt about architecture and realised that drawing and design was a key part of it, it felt like it was probably going to be a good fit for me. And it always felt like a relatively stable profession and something where I could learn quite a lot. With video game design, I came to this much later, so it was after I'd graduated and I was working as an architect. And the first chance to work on a game was really my first introduction to video game work at all, and it just opened up a whole new world of design to me, and the kind of projects where you could really get stuck into the details and be involved in quite a lot of the creative elements for it. So that sort of first week working on this game and deciding what we were going to make and working through all the details of it really sort of stuck me into the profession and that way of working. I think my interest in games came from just having my eyes open to the type of small, amazingly creative, independent games that were being produced. It wasn't something I'd come across until I started working with a friend on a game project, and I was just blown away by the sort of innovation and the different impressive ways that people had used this medium to tell different stories and to create these amazing different interactive experiences. My interest in architecture developed while I was studying and while I was working. I didn't know a huge amount about it to begin with. So it was, I think, as we started learning about architecture from all around the world and doing site visits and really deconstructing how architecture is designed and made, that really grew my interest in architecture. The education that led to the work that I do was from A-levels, when I moved straight onto an undergraduate degree in architecture. And I actually had a really tough time and failed my first year, which looking back on was a really useful thing because I learned a lot during that time. So after that I returned to Bangor and did an art foundation course, which was an amazing chance to experiment with different creative disciplines, and it really set me up to feel like I was ready to go back to architecture and give it a better shot. So I then studied at the Welsh School of Architecture in Cardiff for a 3-year degree, and then as part of the architectural education you have to then work in practice. So I then got a job where I carried on learning, carried on developing in my career. And then after that I did an MA in architecture and then also a diploma. So it's a long course to finish off and to qualify as an architect, but you really are learning all the time. And I think that working with other people in different offices also taught me as much, if not more, than the university work. It's where you really learn how to do your career, and you can use the sort of experience and expertise of your colleagues to move on further. The teachers and the tutors I had all the way from art class in school, and then my art foundation course at Coleg Menai in Bangor, and then my tutors in architecture, they were really the biggest inspiration on my journey. They were always really good at like challenging me and getting me to try different things and experiment with new techniques and ideas, and I think that's just a really important thing to do while you're sort of on your journey to the career that you're going to have. I like to look really broadly at different creative disciplines because there's always things from a completely different way of working that can feed into the work that I do. So for example, it might be finding a photography magazine with a really beautiful art direction and layout and then borrowing some of the graphic design ideas from that to present a project that I'm working on in architecture. Or in video game design, it might be looking at a traditional craft technique. So the main game I'm working on at the moment, Haiku Adventure, is really inspired by the artistic tradition of woodblock making from Japan. So I'm always looking for different ideas and different ways of working from outside of architecture or sort of directly video game design work. My first architecture job was straight out of university, and it was definitely a steep learning curve. I was really thrown in at the deep end, but being given that responsibility early on, I think is sort of the quickest way to develop as an architect. And then in that first job, I was working alongside all of these like really talented people who were slightly further ahead of me in my career, and that chance to be part of a team and to learn from everyone was just such a great experience. And I think I perhaps I even learned more in that than studying. The first time we ever shared a video game project with the public was at Rest in the Left Field collection, where they create a really interesting collection of games there. So it was a bit daunting to be alongside all of these games which I'd heard about and look fantastic, but to have a chance for people to play our game for the first time and to get that level of feedback was just a really great experience. I think that any job where I can use my brain and my hands to sort of think through creative problems is the kind of work I enjoy doing best. So whether that was product design or furniture design, and then recently I've been making clothes for my daughter and really enjoyed working with print design and textiles, so maybe even fashion designer. I'm just a bit of a design geek really. I just love designing and making things and learning new techniques. So a lot of my interests outside of architecture and video games are directly related in some way. And I think that having those kind of interests which can diversify the skills that you've got and teach you new techniques are really useful ways of bringing new ideas into the projects that you work on. The advice I'd give a young person starting a career or a course in architecture or in video game design is to enjoy the process of designing and not be too worried about the endpoint. I think if you're too concerned that the final thing is going to be good enough or is going to showcase your skills enough, then you're kind of losing the point of the design process, which is there to develop. So the first drawing you do won't be good as the second or the third or the fourth. So I think just always iterating and continuing designing and realizing that you can always do better and you can always keep learning is a really important skill to have.